Hey, hi. So we don't have a clicker, so I'm going to be here tapping a button. So I'm just letting you know. We normally walk around a little bit, but we're not going to be walking for this one. At least I won't be walking for this one. That said, thank you for joining us today for From Admin to Architect. It's a Women in Tech session. My name is Shannon Howe. I'm a solution architect at Tata Consultancy Services, and I'm joined by one of my friends, mentors, and role models, Genevieve Aragon.
Thanks, Shannon. Hello, everyone. My name is Genevieve Aragon. I am a technical architect and founder of Escapist Reality, a Salesforce consulting firm. But we'll talk a little bit more about ourselves in just a minute. But in the interest of the clock watchers, let's take a look at the agenda.
So today we're going to start off by talking very high level about women in technology. I'm going to share with you a statistics slide that will make you feel a little sick to your stomach. And then we will go ahead and talk about architects. We're going to focus on two definitions of architect, but I'm going to show you a big list. We'll talk about our paths to architect. We'll talk about the Salesforce certification path to certified technical architect. And then we'll talk about your path to architect. We'll also provide you with some goodies to get started on your journey. That said, here's that slide. According to the National Center for Women and Information Technology, women made up 16% of computer science bachelors in 2015, 26% of the computing workforce in 2016, and of that, 3% of the computing workforce were African American women, 5% were Asian women, and 2% were Hispanic women. Pretty low, right? Pretty low numbers. Adding insult to injury, though, Deloitte found in 2016 that U.S. women developers earn only 79 cents to the dollar that men earn, and 25% of U.S. women in IT roles feel stalled in their careers. It's even worse when we talk about the international women, because 44% of them feel stalled in their careers. So that's just miserable.
But besides being absolutely horrible, why is any of this important?
So we stole this tidbit from Trailhead. I will link the resource in our deck, or it is linked in our deck. But McKinsey found that companies that are more gender diverse are 15% more likely to outperform others. And those which are ethnically diverse are 35% more likely to outperform others. So having a little diversity and having a little gender diversity really impacts your company in a really positive way.
And while we probably don't need to convince those of you here today about this really important fact, sadly, there still are plenty of people that do need to be convinced. So if you find yourselves in conversations with those people, Shannon and I have put together some links to some of our favorite articles and studies to help prepare you for those conversations.
It's always good to prepare yourself with knowledge and a sword.
Obviously, Shannon and I like to be prepared. It's actually one of the things that has helped us to become architects in our field.
Speaking of architects, so we talked about architects. There are actually a lot of different architect titles out there. So I wanted to surface this list because we're going to focus on two titles. But if what we talk about today doesn't interest you, please don't cross architect off of your career journey. You might have an architect title up here one day that would be more suited to your interests. That said, what we're going to be talking about today are technical architects and solution architects.
And while you might think, based on the title, that technical architect is the cooler of the two, there's actually a lot in common between solution architects and technical architects. Both solution architects and technical architects need to have a deep understanding of the platform. They need to have a depth and breadth of what is able to be done out of the box, where it is reasonable to extend the platform, and where it might not be the right fit. Additionally, in addition to needing to know the technical sides of the platform, architects need to have the soft skills necessary to communicate that information to others, not just technical people, but business analysts, business stakeholders, executive sponsors. So architects spend a lot of time in meetings helping to guide people to the right solution. Additionally, architects are responsible for designing the solution and system designs for the projects. They produce a lot of documentation throughout their entire engagement, and to feed all of these activities, architects are constantly learning and consuming documentation.
So, I agree with all of this. But there are certain things that I do as a solution architect that I would never expect Genevieve to do as a technical architect. And I'm sure there's vice versa. So can we talk a little bit about what makes me special? Hashtag millennial. All right. So solution architects usually engage early on. Sometimes we're even involved pre-sales. We document business capabilities, and what that means is we listen to our customers and we try to understand the needs and the wants and the differentiation between the two. We'll build out maps of the current state and where the business capabilities plug into the current state. And we'll also use those desired business capabilities to help frame our future roadmap, which then becomes a place where we start to build out the concepts for the future state and the system architecture.
Now, before we move on from solution architect into the implementation, I do want to take a moment to highlight a particular aspect of solution architects. Because solution architects usually engage clients when they're at their most excited, but also at their most scared. Oftentimes, business stakeholders are betting their careers on the success of the project. And it falls on the solution architects to help guide them through the process from ideation through to designing a solution that will be successful and ultimately setting up the project to succeed. So solution architects are a critical member of the delivery team and a critical part of making the project a success.
Man, it's good to hear a technical architect praise solution architects. So on large consulting projects, it's really common to have a healthy friction between strategy on the solution side and delivery on the technical side. And so long as there's a really healthy friction, it actually makes the project stronger. And this is because you have to challenge your team members to do what's right for you and for the customer, which means that your customer is going to be really happy because you've talked through every decision and you know you made all the right ones. That said, it's super easy to fall into a conflict, so it is a responsibility of both the solution architect and the technical architect to maintain really good relationships and to manage themselves and help the team manage through any kind of political issues on the project or any kind of conflict on the project.
And while the solution architect may have more of that responsibility early on, after the technical architect gets engaged, they start taking on more of that responsibility. So let's talk about what happens when the technical architect gets engaged. So we usually start getting involved at the project kickoff, though if the solution architect needs more technical information early on, they'll reach out to us earlier and we'll talk through some technical challenges. But we partner with the solution architect to make sure this is a successful handoff. And part of our job is to consume the current state and future state roadmaps that the solution architect and the client have put together. It falls on us as technical architects to identify any technical risks that might be coming up in this project. And if there are risks, to design the remediation strategy to either remove those risks, reduce them, or to escalate if their risks are outright project blockers. Additionally, technical architects set all of the technical policies and processes of the project. We are the technical point of escalation for the entire project team, whether they are the developers, the business analysts, the project managers. Anyone who has ultimately a technical challenge or question will roll up to the technical architects. And ultimately, it falls on the technical architects to ensure that what we are delivering meets the customer expectations.
So, judging by the faces in the audience, everybody's going to become a technical architect. So let's talk a little bit more about the Salesforce journey to the end-all, be-all, holy grail CTA title. So there are currently around 200 CTAs in the wild. So if this is where you'd like to be, just know that it's super competitive and don't become discouraged on your journey. That said, I'm a solution architect. One day maybe I'll try to join the CTA group, but that's a big goal for me. I do want to say that some of my favorite certifications aren't on this pyramid. And as somebody who was very technical just a few months ago, I really do want to shout out the admin certification, which isn't represented here, the advanced admin certification, which isn't represented here, and then the Sales Cloud Consultant certification and the Service Cloud Consultant certification. Although they're not in this pyramid, if you're beginning your journey today in Salesforce, I recommend you go after those certifications first because they will give you the broadest understanding of the platform and you'll be really able to take that to the next step by then starting to pursue this pyramid. That said, that's my opinion of the pyramid. I think it's great, but I think maybe it's not the very first thing I would do if I was getting introduced today. Genevieve has a different perspective of the platform, or of the pyramid, since she's a technical architect.
So becoming a Salesforce certified technical architect is extremely valuable, but you shouldn't think of it as a blocker to your career. I have delivered many successful client projects in the enterprise consulting space as a technical architect, and I am not yet certified. It is something that I might pursue at some point in the future, but the main takeaway here is that you don't need to get certified first in order to achieve your dream of becoming an architect and ultimately becoming that trusted advisor to the client.
So now that we've talked about the pyramid, let's talk a little bit about our paths to architect.
So I joined the Salesforce ecosphere about 10 years ago. I came in as a developer with extensive web development background, so for me it was actually a step up to become an admin. I had to learn how to do things declaratively, how to use the out-of-the-box features of Salesforce. So it was a challenge first to get into that mindset and thinking how to use the standard functionalities before I customized. But as I grew my skill set and my understanding, I rose to a senior developer and becoming a technical lead, where I was responsible for guiding the entire delivery of a solution and the implementation, both with the national and international team. And ultimately, I rose to become a technical architect in the enterprise consulting space. I got there through doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of Spike solutions and prototyping, doing trailheads, getting certified, and through networking. But Shannon had a slightly different approach.
True. So I went from admin to architect. I started off in the ecosystem as a Salesforce admin. I grew into a developer role, went into a senior developer role, tech lead at a consulting firm, and then enterprise architect in an IT organization. And then I just recently transitioned back into consulting as a solution architect. Overall, it took about 5 years and involved reading, certifications, networking, prototyping, and Trailhead. But one of the words I want to call out is that we both have networking as something that we took along our journey as a step. We network a little differently, though. So Genevieve, do you want to introduce them to the concept of tea time?
Certainly.
Okay.
Something that was introduced to me by one of my mentors, and something that I like to share with others, is called tea time. So, tea time is a casual, informal, practical method for developing a deeper, meaningful connection with members of your professional circle, your peers, your mentors, your mentees. Whether they occur as regularly scheduled reoccurring meetings on your calendar or ad hoc when you realize you haven't hung out in a while, the barrier to entry is extremely low. There's no agenda required, no prep work needed. You don't even need to have tea, though I recommend it. The main idea here is to create a safe space and forum outside of normal project work where you can share stories, ask advice, brainstorm solutions to particularly complex puzzles, vent some frustrations, be a little silly, basically anything. But the main point is to value yourself and your network enough to make the time to grow those relationships. Making the time and space to have those conversations has definitely helped me to grow my career and to become a better architect. But even more valuable is that some of my best friendships grew out of having tea.
I remember the first time that Genevieve sent me an invite for tea, and I was like, oh, crap. So I was a technical lead on a project. Genevieve was the technical architect, and I was like, what did we blow up? Tea time, informal chat. But I was really pleasantly surprised when Genevieve started to just enter this really friendly conversation, and she started asking me questions about myself and how the project was going and what I thought about certain things. And I was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. So thank you, Genevieve, for taking the time to introduce me to the concept of tea time, because it's something I do with people that I'm mentoring now. And I love giving people the oh crap moment, but it's also really fun to get to know somebody in that way. So thank you.
Thank you.
So now that we've talked a little bit about tea time, let's talk a little bit about your journey and your path to architect.
So we mentioned that there is a wide variety of architects out there, so the key is to find out what you are passionate about and to identify what skills you need to develop in order to become that architect.
So leverage your network. So we talked about tea time. So find people in the roles that you'd like to grow into, and then figure out what you can learn from their experience. But most importantly, give back to that relationship. And what I mean by give back to the relationship is if you have a mentor, make sure that you're constantly on the lookout for things that you think they might be interested to know more about. And if you hear about something, pass it to them.
And don't give up. Becoming an architect takes time, and it should. There is so much to know about the platform, so many skills you need to develop along the way. But as challenges arise, as you have questions, reach out for help. Ask your network. And remember, puzzles are solvable. Have hope.
So we put together some supplies for your journey. The most important one is to follow us on Twitter. Genevieve is Escriel Tweets. I'm Hal Shannon. If you're going to tweet to us, please use the hashtag #admin2arc. That said, what we'd really like to do is we're going to make ourselves available for questions if you have questions, but look to your left and to your right. Let's have tea with our neighbors. All right? So thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Genevieve, for tea time.
Thank you, Shannon. And thank you, everyone. Have a great Dreamforce.